we do, we hope, contributes to the monarchy and the way in which it can convey continuity.
Princess Anne spent late Tuesday afternoon in the security office at St. James's Palace with a heavy black marker. By 5 o'clock, 5 prominent Parker Bowles names were permanently scratched from the guest list for the upcoming state banquet. This absolute purge follows a secret late-night meeting between King Charles and his sister at Sandringham House. The king signed an order that strips his stepfamily of their long-held palace privileges. Queen Camilla discovered the change less than an hour ago, and her reaction has thrown the entire royal household into total chaos. The ultimate battle over the future of the royal bloodline has officially started behind closed doors. The Sandringham Red Line. The tall sash windows of the library at Sandringham House overlooked a completely deserted terrace on June 18th. Inside, a log fire was burning down to gray ash on the stone hearth. King Charles sat in a green leather wingback chair, a tartan blanket draped over his knees. Across the mahogany writing desk sat Princess Anne, dressed in her riding clothes and holding a brown leather document folder. The room was completely silent, except for the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. The king picked up a fountain pen, signed his name at the bottom of a single sheet of parchment, and handed it directly to his sister. The signing of that document was the culmination of a secret 3-day summit at the Norfolk estate. The meeting had not been recorded in the official court circular, and no senior press officers were permitted to travel with the monarch. Charles had requested his sister's presence to resolve a growing institutional crisis regarding the summer state hospitality budget. The king's ongoing medical treatments had forced him to look closely at the court's long-term stability. He knew that the public image of the monarchy was becoming increasingly vulnerable due to the constant presence of non-blood relatives at official palace functions. Princess Anne had arrived at Sandringham with a comprehensive review of the palace's guest lists for the upcoming autumn season. She had spent the previous fortnight auditing the security clearances and transport arrangements handled by the Lord Chamberlain's office. Her findings confirmed that Queen Camilla's extended family had been granted unprecedented access to the royal estate. 5 specific members of the Parker Bowles family had been allocated permanent security details, official vehicles, and dedicated suites inside Buckingham Palace for major state occasions. The 5 individuals included Camilla's children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, along with 3 extended family members who would become regular fixtures at royal gatherings. For years, their inclusion had been handled as a personal courtesy by the king. But the new financial realities facing the sovereign grant meant that every single security pass had to be justified to the treasury. Anne argued that providing state-funded protection and luxury accommodation to individuals who performed 0 public duties was an unacceptable risk to the crown's reputation. The king suggested a staggered reduction in their access rights over the next 12 months. He was deeply concerned about the personal friction this would cause within his marriage. Camilla had spent years working to integrate her children into the social fabric of the royal family, but Princess Anne refused to accept any delays. She pointed out that the public was demanding absolute transparency regarding royal expenditure. She told her brother that if he did not authorize the cuts immediately, she would step down from her role as the head of the Royal Hospitality Committee. This ultimatum forced the king's hand. Charles signed the executive order, legally transferring the final authority over all state guest lists to his sister. The document gave Anne the power to alter any manifest without requiring the joint signature of the Queen's private office. It was a massive structural shift that effectively stripped Camilla of her ability to protect her family's position at court. Anne wasted no time in executing her new powers. By 9 o'clock the following morning, the brown leather folder was on a desk inside the security headquarters at St. James's Palace. Anne sat with the master of the household and a senior officer from the Metropolitan Police's Royalty Protection Command. She opened the master registry for the upcoming state banquet for the visiting European dignitaries. She took a heavy black marker and drew a thick line through the names of Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. She then repeated the action for the 3 remaining extended family members on the list. The physical removal of these names sent an immediate shockwave through the palace's administrative ranks. A junior clerk who witnessed the meeting reported that the security codes for all 5 individuals were deactivated on the main computer system within 10 minutes. Their biometric gate passes, which allowed them to drive straight into the inner courtyard of Buckingham Palace, were flagged for immediate confiscation upon their next arrival. The circle had been closed, and the boundaries of the bloodline were restored. A major mystery appeared when the security team checked the garage logs for the Windsor estate later that afternoon. They discovered that a royal pool car had been dispatched to Tom Parker Bowles's private residence in London just 2 hours before Anne's meeting. The vehicle had been ordered using an old authorization code assigned to the Queen's personal staff. It became clear that Camilla's office was still attempting to use royal resources for her family, unaware that the rules had been rewritten overnight at Sandringham. The gate supervisor at Windsor Castle acted immediately on Anne's new protocol. When the royal vehicle arrived at the outer checkpoint, with a member of the Parker Bowles family inside, the guard refused to lift the automated barrier. He informed the driver that the authorization code had been voided by the Lord Chamberlain's office. The vehicle was forced to turn around in full view of the public road, creating an immediate crisis for the Queen's staff who were waiting inside the castle. Camilla learned of the gate stoppage while she was conducting a charity briefing in the morning room at Clarence House. Her private secretary entered the room and handed her a printed copy of the new security directive signed by the king. Camilla read the document once, stood up from her desk, and walked straight toward the king's private apartments. The confrontation that followed lasted for over an hour, with staff reporting that the Queen demanded an immediate reversal of the Sandringham decision. The king remained firm, citing his sister's assessment of the public budget. He explained that the decision was institutional, not personal, and could not be overturned without causing a massive row with the Parliamentary Oversight Committee. This response confirmed to Camilla that she had been completely outmaneuvered by Princess Anne during the secret weekend in Norfolk. The alliance between the king and his sister had proven stronger than the Queen's domestic influence. By late afternoon, the news of the purge had spread to the Prince and Princess of Wales at Adelaide Cottage. Prince William reportedly expressed total support for his aunt's decisive action. He had long maintained that the inner circle of the monarchy should be limited strictly to those who dedicate their lives to public service. The removal of the Parker Bowles names was seen by the younger generation as a vital step in safeguarding the future integrity of the throne. The missing titles at the gate. The morning mist was lifting off the Thames as a dark blue sedan approached the Cambridge Gate at Windsor Castle on June 19th. Inside the vehicle sat Tom Parker Bowles and his personal assistant, reviewing notes for an upcoming culinary event linked to the Royal Parks estate. The car slowed to a halt exactly 3 feet from the automated security bollards. A guard in a high-visibility tactical vest stepped out of the stone lodge, carrying a handheld electronic scanner. He did not salute, nor did he wave the vehicle through as he had done for the past 4 years. Instead, he signaled for the driver to lower the front window. The driver held out a laminated plastic card bearing a gold portcullis badge and a specific serial number. This pass normally granted the holder immediate access to the private sovereign zones without a secondary check. The guard took the card, placed it against his digital scanner, and waited for the verification light. The screen flashed a bright crimson, accompanied by a double-tone audio alert indicating an invalid profile. The guard swiped the card a second time, but the system's response remained unchanged. The security database had completely locked out the credentials. This immediate rejection at the perimeter gatehouse was the direct result of Princess Anne's instructions to the Royal Protection Command. The palace security network had been programmed with a new set of exclusion filters at exactly midnight. The orders specified that any pass associated with the non-blood relatives of the monarch must be checked against a secondary physical manifest. The guard pulled a clipboard from his belt, scanned the daily arrival spreadsheet, and confirmed that the name Parker Bowles was completely missing from the authorized list. The assistant in the rear seat attempted to resolve the issue by producing a formal printed letter from Queen Camilla's private office. The document carried the royal cipher and stated that the vehicle was authorized to enter the inner quadrangle to deliver materials for a private family lunch. The gate supervisor looked at the letter, shook his head, and informed the occupants that his orders came directly from the Lord Chamberlain's office. He stated that a handwritten note from a personal secretary could no longer override an automated security block. Tension escalated rapidly as a second vehicle pulled up behind the sedan, causing a minor traffic jam on the public approach road. The second car belonged to the Duke of Kent, who was arriving for a scheduled military briefing with the king. The Duke's security detail immediately began flashing their lights, signaling for the obstruction to be cleared. The gate supervisor instructed the driver of the blue sedan to reverse into a narrow gravel holding pen near the outer wall. It was a visible public demotion happening right on the edge of the castle grounds. The facts of the gate procedure were unyielding. Under the new protocol established by Princess Anne, only individuals holding a current warrant as a working member of the royal family were cleared for automatic gate access. Extended family members were required to log their visits 72 hours in advance through the main palace registry. Tom Parker Bowles had not been informed of this administrative change because the notification letters had been held back by the Lord Chamberlain's office until that very morning. The family had walked straight into a trap designed to expose their lack of institutional status. A distinct mystery developed while the vehicle was idling in the gravel pen. A junior gate officer noticed that the serial number on Tom's invalidated pass was linked to a permanent Royal Fleet vehicle allowance. This allowance meant the taxpayer was funding the fuel and maintenance for a car used exclusively for private commercial purposes. The officer checked the digital signature on the vehicle requisition form. The allowance had been approved by a high-ranking courtier in the Queen's household, who did not possess the financial authority to grant lifetime vehicle perks to non-royal citizens. The officer logged the unauthorized serial number into the central audit ledger, triggering an immediate internal notification to the palace financial inspectors. The mystery of how the vehicle allowance had remained hidden for so long was resolved within minutes. The Queen's office had been routing transport costs through Buckingham Palace's general domestic hospitality budget, masking the private expense under the heading of official entertaining. Anne's comprehensive audit had uncovered the loophole, and she used the gate incident to permanently close it. The gate supervisor returned the plastic pass to the driver, but kept the laminated gold badge. He told the occupants that the car would not be permitted to cross the threshold under any circumstances. If Mr. Parker Bowles wished to attend the lunch, he would have to leave the vehicle outside the walls and proceed to the visitor's center to apply for a standard public day pass. This option would require him to stand in line with hundreds of tourists, pass through a public metal detector, and wear a temporary paper wristband. Rather than subject himself to the public scrutiny of the tourist line, Tom instructed his driver to reverse out of the holding pen and return to the main road. The sedan accelerated away from the Cambridge Gate, heading back toward London before the morning changing of the guard ceremony had even commenced. The news of the rejection traveled up the Castle Hill to the Queen's private apartments within 10 minutes, carried by a frantic radio message from the security supervisor. The physical exclusion at the gatehouse proved that the Sandringham decision was not a theoretical policy change. It was a practical, immediate reduction of the Queen's family footprint within the royal residences. The palace staff immediately began adjusting their behavior, realizing that the balance of authority had shifted dramatically toward Princess Anne's office. Courtiers who had previously rushed to accommodate requests from Camilla's children were now carefully checking every directive against the new master guidelines. By midday, the gate logs were forwarded directly to Princess Anne's desk at St. James's Palace. She reviewed the report, noted the confiscation of the unauthorized vehicle pass, and signed her initials in the column marked Action Completed. She had successfully demonstrated that the gates of the castle would no longer open for anyone who did not carry the official burden of public duty. The first stage of the institutional cleanup was complete, leaving the Queen's household completely isolated from the daily mechanics of the court. Anne takes the reins of court protocol. A single green shaded desk lamp illuminated the corner of the Lord Chamberlain's office at St. James's Palace on June 20th. Princess Anne sat at a large mahogany table covered with leather-bound ledgers dating back to the late Victorian era. She was accompanied by two senior constitutional lawyers from the Cabinet Office and the permanent secretary to the Treasury. On the table lay the draft of the revised court circular formatting guide. Anne took a blue ballpoint pen and struck through a paragraph regarding the precedence order for non-titled guests at official dinners. She looked across at the lawyers and stated that the public record must reflect public service, nothing else. The intervention was a deliberate exercise of Anne's role as the newly appointed warden of the Court Protocol Committee. The position had been vacant since early spring, leaving a vacuum that the Queen's household had quickly filled with their own administrative appointments. By taking direct control of the protocol office, Anne effectively placed herself at the center of the palace's daily machinery. She possessed the constitutional authority to rewrite the rules governing who could stand in the receiving line, who could sit within view of the television cameras, and who could use the royal cipher on private correspondence. Her primary objective was to reverse the slow expansion of the court circle that had occurred over the past 2 years. Anne had long argued that a bloated royal family was the greatest threat to the survival of the institution in the 21st century. She believed that the public would only tolerate the expenses of the monarchy if the privileges were restricted exclusively to those who worked full-time for the state. The inclusion of Camilla's children and extended relatives in official family photographs had caused significant friction within the core bloodline. Anne viewed this visual blending of families as a dangerous dilution of the royal brand. The formal changes began with the immediate cancellation of the ceremonial seating plan for the upcoming Garter Day service at St. George's Chapel. Under the previous arrangement drafted by Camilla's private secretary, 5 prominent seats in the choir stalls had been assigned to members of the Parker Bowles family. These seats were traditionally reserved for knights' companions or the direct children of the sovereign. Anne ordered that the names be removed from the oak stalls and replaced with senior staff members from the Royal Commonwealth Society, a move that shifted the event's focus from private family privilege to public civic recognition. Tension mounted within the palace administration when the master of the household objected to the sudden restructuring of the guest lists. He pointed out that the invitations had already been sent out with the royal crest, and that canceling them now would cause significant social embarrassment. He argued that the Queen had personally promised her family these positions during the initial planning sessions in January. Anne remained completely unmoved by the argument, stating that a personal promise made by the Queen did not carry the legal weight of an executive order signed by the King. She told the master that if any guest arrived without a validated security profile, they would be turned back at the chapel door by the military guards. The facts of the protocol ledger were entirely on Anne's side. She produced an 1892 warrant signed by Queen Victoria, which explicitly stated that the extended family of a queen consort holds no official rank or precedence within the United Kingdom unless granted a personal peerage by the Prime Minister. Because none of the Parker Bowles family members held a hereditary title or a state appointment, their presence in ceremonial spaces was entirely dependent on the monarch's personal whim. Anne used this historical legal precedent to override every objection raised by the Queen's household staff. A distinct mystery appeared during the review of the chapel transport arrangements on June 21st. A transport clerk discovered that 5 state landaus, the ceremonial horse-drawn carriages used for high-profile public processions, had been reserved for a private party traveling from the Savoy Hotel to Windsor on the day of the service. The reservation had been made under a generic administrative account linked to the master of the horse. The clerk noticed that the destination address matched the private residences of Camilla's extended family members in London, suggesting another hidden use of state assets. Anne launched an immediate investigation into the carriage booking system to identify the official who cleared the transaction. The mystery was resolved within 2 hours when digital access logs revealed that the Queen's personal transport manager had created the reservation using an obsolete military code from the late Duke of Edinburgh's office. He had used this forgotten administrative loophole to secure the state carriages for the Parker Bowles family, bypassing the standard vetting queue. Anne immediately canceled the vehicle reservations and reallocated the landaus to the royal pensioners who were scheduled to attend the ceremony as honored guests. The closure of the carriage loophole forced a final, tense confrontations between the Queen's private office and the Protocol Committee. Camilla's head of communications issued a formal memorandum warning that the public exclusion of the Queen's children would be interpreted by the national media as a major internal family rift. The memorandum suggested that a public display of disunity could damage the King's standing during a crucial political season. The press office requested a temporary suspension of the new rules until after the summer recess concluded in September. Anne responded to the memorandum with a single-page letter delivered to Clarence House by a royal messenger. She stated that the press office's concerns were entirely secondary to the strict enforcement of constitutional law. She argued that the media would respect a monarchy that showed absolute discipline regarding the use of public funds and royal privileges. She made it clear that she would not tolerate any further attempts to use the national press to pressure the king into granting special favors to non-blood relatives. The letter effectively ended any further discussion of a compromise between the two households. The administrative victory gave Anne total control over the court's physical layout for the remainder of the summer season. She used her position to implement a new, automated vetting system for every single guest list processed by the palace. From that point forward, every name submitted for an official event had to be accompanied by a verified national insurance number and a clear description of their public service contribution. This rule applied to everyone, from international diplomats to the family's personal friends, making it impossible for the Queen's office to slip unauthorized names onto the manifests. By the evening of June 22nd, the revised protocol guidelines were uploaded to the Central Palace network. The names of the 5 Parker Bowles relatives were completely eradicated from the active databases, leaving them with no official standing within the royal infrastructure. Princess Anne left her office at St. James's just before midnight, carrying the signed ledgers back to her residence at Gatcombe Park. She had successfully rebuilt the wall around the inner circle of the throne, ensuring that the privileges of the crown would remain locked inside the royal bloodline. The secret Sandringham Compromise. The long gallery at Sandringham House was illuminated only by the gray light of a Norfolk afternoon on June 17th. A stack of green cloth-bound financial ledgers lay on a low oak coffee table, right next to a silver tray containing the king's afternoon medication. King Charles sat with his hands resting on the armrests of his chair, staring out at the expansive gardens. Princess Anne stood by the large bay window, holding a red pen and a copy of the confidential Sovereign Grant Audit Report. The silence between the two siblings lasted for several minutes before Anne walked over to the table and tapped the top ledger with her pen. The private conversation that followed was the true catalyst for the sudden structural shifts within the royal court. For months, the public had only seen the outward harmony of a family pulling together during a complex health crisis. Behind the heavy oak doors of Sandringham, however, a much more pragmatic fiscal negotiation was taking place. Charles had invited his sister to the estate because he needed her unyielding administrative discipline to resolve a mounting political problem. The National Audit Office had quietly warned the palace that the upcoming year's royal expenditure report would face unprecedented parliamentary scrutiny due to rising security costs. Anne's position during the secret summit was entirely based on institutional preservation. She presented the king with a detailed breakdown of the auxiliary costs associated with maintaining Queen Camilla's extended family within the palace security perimeter. The figures showed that over £300,000 had been spent on unscheduled transport, private protection details, and hospitality upgrades for non-titled individuals over the previous 12 months. Anne told her brother that the public would not tolerate these hidden expenses at a time when ordinary citizens were facing intense financial pressures across the country. The king initially attempted to defend the expenditure as a necessary cost for his wife's personal well-being and domestic comfort. He argued that Camilla had taken on an immense public burden since his diagnosis, and that supporting her children was a small price to pay for her continued stability. He suggested that the funding could be quietly shifted to his private duchy accounts, thereby keeping the expenses entirely out of the public eye. Anne immediately countered this proposal, pointing out that even private funds are subject to public disclosure when used to support individuals who regularly appear at official state engagements. Tension escalated when Anne produced a draft of a parliamentary questionnaire prepared by an opposition member of the Public Accounts Committee. The document explicitly requested a justification for the royal security passes granted to Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. Anne made it clear that if the palace did not act voluntarily to clear the guest lists, Parliament would launch a formal inquiry that would expose the inner workings of the royal household to the tabloid press. She presented the king with a stark choice: either authorize an internal purge of the court lists, or face a public financial scandal that would overshadow the entire summer season. The facts of the king's secret decision were written into a 2-page memorandum titled the Sandringham Accord. Under the terms of this compromise, Charles agreed to hand over absolute control of the court hospitality budget and guest clearances to Princess Anne for a minimum period of 3 years. In return, Anne agreed to personally manage the public relations fallout from the cuts, shielding the king from any direct domestic friction with the queen. The king signed the memorandum at exactly 4 o'clock on June 17th, effectively giving his sister a blank check to restructure the court as she saw fit. A distinct mystery appeared during the signing of the document when the king's private secretary noticed a handwritten amendment at the very bottom of the second page. The amendment, written in the king's personal shorthand, specified that a separate private trust fund should be established to cover the private medical and holiday travel of Camilla's grandchildren. The amendment had not been discussed during the May negotiation sessions, and it appeared that Charles had tried to quietly create a financial safety net for his stepfamily without his sister's knowledge. The secretary flagged the amendment for Anne before the document was officially witnessed and stamped with the royal seal. The mystery of the hidden clause was resolved within seconds when Anne took her red pen and drew a thick cross directly through the handwritten text. She looked at the king and told him that there could be no secret exemptions or side deals if the protocol overhaul was to succeed. Charles did not contest the deletion. He simply nodded, leaned back into his chair, and allowed the secretary to take the finalized document down to the palace archives. The resolution of the Sandringham Accord immediately stripped the Queen's household of its independent spending power. Under the new rules, any expenditure over £500 requested by Camilla's staff had to be personally vetted and signed off by Anne's financial deputy at Gatcombe Park. The administrative independence that the Parker Bowles faction had enjoyed since the coronation was dismantled with a single stroke of the pen. The king had chosen the long-term survival of the crown over the domestic peace of his private household. The immediate consequence of the compromise was the total lockdown of the palace's guest lists for the upcoming summer events. Anne used her new authority to block any further applications for personal guest passes submitted by the Queen's secretaries. She made it clear to the staff that the Sandringham decision was final and that any attempt to bypass the new budget caps would result in the immediate suspension of the responsible courtier. The machinery of the state had been realigned to protect the core bloodline, leaving the extended stepfamily entirely outside the royal network. By the evening of June the 17th, the secret documents were locked inside a secure courier box and transported back to London under armed escort. The king remained at Sandringham to continue his rest, while Princess Anne returned to her office to begin the systematic removal of the 5 Parker Bowles names from the state registries. The compromise had been reached, the documents had been signed, and the balance of power inside the palace walls had changed forever. The palace fallout and new alliances. The grand ballroom at Buckingham Palace was completely dark at midnight on June 23rd. A single security guard walked the length of the polished parquet floor, his flashlight reflecting off the gold leaf frames of the royal portraits. The massive room had hosted a diplomatic reception for 90 international ambassadors. While the public photographs showed a flawless display of British state pageantry, the room's physical arrangement told a completely different story. Princess Anne had positioned herself on the left side of the grand dais, completely separating the king from the Queen's remaining personal staff. The internal fallout from the Sandringham decision has transformed the daily operations of the royal household. The cold silence between Queen Camilla and Princess Anne has now become permanent, affecting every administrative department within the palace walls. Staff members from the two households no longer share the same dining tables in the basement cafeteria at lunch. The tension has grown so severe that the Lord Chamberlain has been forced to establish a formal boundary line for internal communications, ensuring that emails regarding state functions are strictly filtered to prevent any direct arguments between the secretaries. As the facts of the new palace hierarchy were formalized on June 24th during the quarterly meeting of the Royal Collection Trust. For the past 3 years, Queen Camilla had served as the honorary chair of the committee that oversees the display of historical royal treasures. During the Tuesday morning session, however, the master of the household read a new directive from the king. Princess Anne was appointed as the joint managing trustee of the collection, giving her veto power over any changes to the permanent exhibitions. This move effectively prevents Camilla from displaying any private artwork or historical items linked to her family history without her sister-in-law's explicit permission. This rapid consolidation of authority has created an entirely new alliance between the Princess Royal and the Prince of Wales. Prince William met with his aunt for a private lunch at the Cavalry and Guards Club in London on June 25th. The meeting lasted for 2 hours, and no personal bodyguards were permitted inside the private dining room. William reportedly expressed his total gratitude to Anne for handling the administrative removal of the Parker Bowles names. He believes that the future survival of the throne depends entirely on keeping the institution tightly focused on the direct line of succession, completely free from the influence of non-blood relatives. A new mystery emerged during this period when a local florist in Windsor reported an unusual delivery block on June 26th. A large arrangement of white roses had been ordered through a private account at Kensington Palace, destined for a private suite inside Windsor Castle. The delivery manifest showed that the flowers were addressed to Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter. The security team at the castle gates immediately intercepted the vehicle and refused to allow the delivery to proceed, citing the updated exclusion list that bans any unverified personal gifts from entering the royal apartments. The investigation into the flower delivery resolved the mystery within 24 hours. The order had not been placed by Prince William or any member of his staff. A junior assistant in the Queen's household had used an old Kensington Palace account number from 4 years ago to disguise the purchase, attempting to sneak a personal family gesture past the gate guards. The discovery led to the assistant's immediate dismissal for a breach of security protocol, and used the incident to issue a final, strict warning to the entire household staff. Any further attempts to use royal resources to bypass the Sandringham decision would result in immediate termination without a reference. The total enforcement of the new rules has left Queen Camilla increasingly isolated within her own court. She has canceled 2 private weekend functions that were scheduled to take place at her personal home in Wiltshire, choosing instead to remain inside the state apartments at Windsor to monitor the King's daily schedule. Her primary focus has shifted to protecting her remaining influence over the King's personal diary, as she fears that Princess Anne will attempt to introduce further budget cuts before the autumn state visits begin. The domestic balance of power has been permanently broken, leaving the Queen with zero administrative leverage over the state machinery. By the final days of June, the physical evidence of the Parker Bowles purge was complete. The 5 names have been entirely erased from the central digital directory used by the Palace telecommunications team, meaning that any incoming calls from those individuals are routed to a standard public inquiry desk, rather than to the family's private extensions. The automated security bollards at every royal residence are now programmed to remain firmly in place whenever a vehicle linked to their private addresses approaches the perimeter. The wall around the royal bloodline has been successfully rebuilt, and the gates are locked. The long-term reality of this modern monarchy is now clear to everyone working inside the palace. The era of the expanded court circle is over, replaced by a rigid disciplined structure that prioritizes public service over family privilege. Princess Anne has successfully carried out her brother's secret decision, ensuring the crown remains protected from future public financial scandals. As the summer season progresses, the inner circle of the throne remains reserved exclusively for those who bear the historic burden of the royal bloodline, leaving the extended step family entirely outside the castle walls. The black marker has done its job, and the Parker Bowles names are gone from the royal ledger. Princess Anne has proven once again why she is considered the ultimate protector of the British crown, but the deeper fractures inside the family are bound to show as the summer state occasions begin. Thank you for watching this detailed breakdown of the hidden power struggles within the House of Windsor. If you want to stay ahead of every major shift inside the royal court, make sure to hit the subscribe button right now. Click the bell icon to get immediate notifications whenever a new story drops. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Did Princess Anne make the right decision for the future of the monarchy? We will see you in the next video.